Hey, this is Mr. V doing a book review today for 1776 by David McCullough. This is a non-fictional book which covers the year 1776, which is the year America wrote the Declaration of Independence, and they were fighting many battles to get their independence of that year. So before you, if you're thinking of picking up this book, before you get this book, I want you to know that this book, it covers 1776, but it does not cover the whole American Revolution. You should know that. At the very end, he kind of summarizes what happens during the American Revolution, but he does it fairly quickly. So know that it does cover 1776 very well, but it's not the American Revolution as a whole. But it kind of sets up what will become later. Anyway. So, I enjoyed this book, and I'll go through some of the things I liked and I did not like about the book. But, I enjoyed the book because some of the things I liked was that he starts out kind of like he's in London, and it's with the king, King George III, and it's basically the king and his men, and like they know America's rebelling, and they're trying to like discuss like what to do. Because, some of those things, sometimes you forget that stuff of like, yeah, America was rebelling, but it's like the king has to then decide, okay, what do we do? Do we go and send a humongous force, or what can we do to kind of stop them from rebelling? So you get to see that like perspective of like what they do. And, it is really cool. And I'd say one thing that McCullough does very well in this book is that he basically just wrote the truth. When he was talking about the king and the men and what happened in that time, he wrote the truth about what's going on. And he writes the truth in that he shows a lot of the struggles that went on, not only for Britain, but also for the Americans. And he's really brutally honest about the Americans and some of these things that you almost like, I don't think you learn in schools. And it's like really interesting, like some of the things that he goes, I won't go in depth, but some of the things he does cover is like how the American army, like they weren't organized, they were very inexperienced, they weren't being paid on time, they didn't even have uniforms. Some of them that had uniforms had bad uniforms. There were dirty camps. A lot of them were just drinking nonstop. And how they didn't have enough weapons or gunpowder, or sometimes they didn't even have enough army men type of thing. And that's why you could see he goes in depth about a lot of the struggles they face. I just gave you a quick briefing of like some of the struggles of the American army faced. And that's why they were so close to defeat on so many times. And, it is really cool that he did that and that he was honest, because through that, you not only see like, okay, the American soldiers aren't doing well, but you also see how much pressure was put on George Washington and the other generals. And he's mentioning the other generals. A lot of times people forget the names of these other generals, but it's like, yeah, the main decision maker may have been George Washington, but there were still many generals making the decisions, and they had a lot of pressure on them as well. And it's like he shows that, like, how much pressure they faced. And there are things in the book which I didn't know was like how the king would basically give them a pardon if they would stop rebelling. And, and it's like, how do you even keep fighting at that point if the king will pardon you at that point? And it just shows the pressures. And that's why I said he's pretty honest about it. And the other parts which were really cool about the book that I really enjoyed was like, when from like this perspective, this is 2023 in the United States. It's like we think of it as, yeah, the king there, he was evil. That's why the founding fathers were rebelling and all that. But he shows in the book that it's like you forget that there are many people who were still loyal to the king. They were still loyalists to the king that were in America at the time. It's like not everybody was against the king. And there were people that thought the founding fathers were too radical and too extreme and were against the founding fathers. So, you forget that aspect. And, and I would say that was like one of the best aspects of the book was that McCullough does a great job of balancing like the British and the American perspective. It's like, yeah, you see like what is the American perspective of the rebellion or the rebels. But then you also forget that people that are still living in America were still very loyal to the king. And like he shows both sides of that, which is really cool. And, I thought that was like probably the best part of the book is that he'll show both sides. Now, some of the areas that I did not like about the book, is that he didn't start the book. As I said, he started with the king, you know, in the beginning, but he doesn't say why America is rebelling. And, you know, I didn't like that aspect. You know, later they're going for independence, but he didn't say why they were initially rebelling, which was, I know one of them was high taxation, you know, but he didn't say that in the book, you know, so I didn't like that aspect. And another part I said that goes hand in hand with, like, I liked that he showed how many people were loyal to the king, but he didn't say, like, how many were against the king versus how many were loyal to the king. And I know there's no exact numbers out there, but even just a general consensus, like a general number, was it like 60-40 or anything like that? Like, or 60% against the king and 40% with, or was it 50-50? Like, he never said any of these types of things. And maybe it was because he couldn't get any official data, but I thought it would have been a little better if he had given some of those statistics, because so much has to be done, like that's happening in the book. So much has to be done, whether it be transferring things or, you know, transferring gunpowder or, you know, the fights, all that. And it's like, it would help to know how many people were for the king and how many people were against the king, you know. So that was one thing I thought that was, he could have done a little better. And one thing, and this is kind of a mixed feeling for this one, is that I felt it should have been more in depth, the book overall. You know, it was not, I don't want a book to be too in depth. I never want it to be like just like so in depth, but I felt he could have gone a little more in depth with certain fights or anything like that happened in 1776. And one area I felt he could have gone more in depth was, you know, I felt he could have provided like things like maps. I got the Kindle version. Maybe the paperback or hardcover version has maps, but there weren't maps in the Kindle version. And I think it would have helped, because while he's discussing some of these battles or some of these bridges, things like that, it would have helped to see a map of like, okay, why was it risky to do this, or why did they have to go across this bridge, or, you know, where are they going, you know. So I thought that that definitely would have helped. Now, as for the writing style, I thought, as I said, overall, I still thought this was well written. The writing style, because what he does is, McCullough, as a historian, I don't know how much research he had to do, because he basically uses like letters and journals and articles and kind of like perspective and like weaves it all together nicely. You know, so that's why I say it's very well written in those regards. And I told you, he does go in depth, but not too in depth. And I thought he should have gone a little more in depth. But if you want to kind of start out learning about the beginnings of the American Revolution, you know, this would be a great way. That way you don't have to read like a 1,000-page book and then get intimidated. You know, so, but I still thought he could have gone a little more in depth. But, you know, that's just me, because he still does give you like who the major people are. He gives you the dates, but it's different than like a history class, because he makes it a lot more entertaining. It's not like, oh, you just remember this person and this date. It's like he makes it entertaining by giving you the background and explaining the whole situation. And I told you, he was balancing it between the American perspective and the British perspective. So, you know, I thought that was really cool, because then he gives you like the whole situation, which then made it very entertaining, because you saw, okay, what did America want? All right, what did Britain want? Okay, and then like you kind of see both sides. And it was really cool, like, that he did that. I thought he did a great job with that. And I also thought, just for all the people that were in the book, I thought that he did a great job of like giving them life. You know, this was nonfiction, so these are real people, but like the book was focused around Washington, you know, that makes sense. But there were still many other generals and many other people that were involved in this, and he gives you the names of those people, but he also explains who they were, to where you get to know who those people are. And I think that's very helpful when knowing it. And it's sad that in American history they don't really cover most of those people anymore. You know, it's kind of sad, but that's why it kind of gives you like such great depth to like the starting of the American Revolution and like kind of the founding of the United States, you know. And lastly, the thing I thought he did really well in his writing is I thought that he set the situations very well, and the reason that is because you already know who the people are, the place of where it's happening, the situations for both sides and what both sides think, to where then that gives you like a great overall perspective of like the wars and the battles fought and all these things, to where, you know, it was definitely a great and entertaining read, you know. But I definitely recommend that if you are interested in the American Revolution or George Washington or anything like that, that you go out and you pick this up. If you're even slightly interested in the American Revolution, I definitely recommend that you guys go out and pick this book up. If you guys have any comments, disagreements, questions, anything like that, please post it in the comment section below. Hope you guys click the subscribe button, as I always upload multiple different types of book reviews. But thank you for watching my book review today. This is Mr. V. Go enjoy reading.